The horror film has been a staple in the world of cinema since the early days of silent film. But things have come a long way since the likes of The Haunted Castle, L'Inferno, and Nosferatu. Today, there are so many horror subgenres that it's tough to keep track. Zombies, ghosts, and aliens are all things that scare us, all under the umbrella of horror. Horror can make us laugh, disgusted, scared, or just plain freaked out. That's what makes it such a rich and diverse genre. We're going to take a deeper dive into some of the subgenres that make up what we call horror movies, as well as give our take of some of our favorites. The monster film, or creature feature, is one of the oldest subgenres in the biz. From the Latin word monstrare, meaning to warn, these beasts go back to ancient stories of giant sea monsters, cyclops, dragons, and even Beowulf. It was always destined for monsters to wind up in film, and some of the oldest horror movies are monster films. Vampires, werewolves, giant monsters, small monsters, aliens, zombies, both viral and undead, all fall under the category. One of the very first monster films was Golem, directed by Paul Wegener. Golem is the story of a clay statue resurrected by a Kabbalist rabbi. When the golem falls in love with a young girl and she does not return his love, he goes on a murderous rampage. Shortly after, the German expressionist film Nosferatu, directed by F.W. Murnau, brought vampires to the screen. The film was ordered to be destroyed based on similarities to Dracula, since they couldn't secure the rights. But fortunately for us, some prints survived, and horror fans everywhere are able to watch the film, eternally rendering it into the vaults of classic horror. Then came what some refer to as the golden age of the monster films. These are the films from the 1930s all the way into the 1950s. Bela Lugosi's 1935 film Dracula has burned an image of the character into the minds of anyone who recalls the name. In the same era, we also got the Wolfman and Frankenstein. In the 1950s, we saw films like Creature from the Black Lagoon, Them, and The Blob. Monsters can even cross over into sci-fi. When Godzilla hit the scene in 1954, it began a timeless franchise that carried on through many generations, giving us the embodiment of the giant monster. It's hard to talk about monsters without mentioning zombies, runners, walkers, viral, and undead, but all of them reflect on our fear of what lies beyond the mortal curtain. The franchise that started it all was George Romero's Night of the Living Dead. The film was very controversial, with some calling it an orgy of sadism. Although tame by today's standards, fans had never seen horror like this on the screen. Despite the controversy, the film went on to become a cult classic and is credited for inventing the zombie genre, which influenced the likes of World War Z, The Walking Dead, and 28 Days Later. Horror isn't limited to the confines of Earth. Ridley Scott's Alien gave us a glimpse into the unknown perils of flesh-eating space monsters. It's easy to underestimate how significant this film was to the moviegoer. Some have called this film the definitive combination of horror and science fiction. Although we think of it as a horror film first, with sci-fi attributes, it has influenced the culture at large since its debut in 1979. It was even deemed culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant by the National Film Preservation Board of the United States. The series eventually crossed paths with the Predator films, giving us Alien vs. Predator, uniting the two franchises.
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
Monsters in nature can offer the same level of terror as the ones in space, and be even more terrifying than the fictional counterparts, since their premise is much closer to reality. Audiences everywhere became horrified of the water when Steven Spielberg's Jaws was released in 1975 in a similar way that Alfred Hitchcock made us scared of the sky with the birds. Jaws was one of only a handful of horror films nominated for an Oscar in the Best Picture category. Reluctant to be typecast as a truck and shark director, Spielberg wanted to quit the production before it even started. The producers, however, convinced him otherwise, and the rest, they say, is history. And who could forget the 1980s Christmas classic Gremlins? Ensuring the survival of the tiny monster, Gremlins has become a cult classic and a favorite around Christmas time.
Why do you do this? I like to do it. I enjoy it. Take your aesthetes, taste pure things. Kill them swiftly if you will. But do it! For do not doubt! You are a killer, Louis!
1994's Interview with the Vampire changed our concept of what a vampire movie could be, telling the story from the perspective of the vampire. After all, they have feelings too. And the top of our list is 2007's The Mist, directed by Frank Darabont. The film has its share of big scary monsters, but the scariest part of this story is what people do when confronted by fear. We are the monsters more than the monsters in the film, forcing us to face the beast that lives in all of us. The monster genre isn't going anywhere, and our suspicion is there will be many more films made in this subgenre of horror that will scare us silly. What's your favorite monster type? Did we miss anything you find particularly scary? Let us know in the comments section, and be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell to stay up to date on all of our content.